The hostess smiled as she led me through the quiet, polished interior of the restaurant. Glass chandeliers dangled like frozen raindrops from the ceiling. Every surface gleamed marble brass crystal. I'd made a reservation under my son's name, as instructed. Camilla wanted something special for Theo's birthday, so she'd chosen one of Charlotte's most exclusive restaurants. I didn't protest. I'd learned over the years that disagreeing with Camilla only made things harder for Elias. I arrived 15 minutes early, as I always did. My dress was navy simple, but clean, the best one in my closet. I'd fixed my hair that morning and even dusted on a little blush, though I wasn't sure it helped. The gift I carried was carefully wrapped a wooden train set for Theo, the kind that clicks together in endless combinations. I'd found it at a small toy shop and immediately thought of him. The table was near the window overlooking the city skyline. I sat down, quietly smoothed the hem of my dress, and waited. 10 minutes passed, then 20. Finally, I saw Elias enter with Camilla just behind him. She looked immaculate in a cream-colored coat, her heels tapping smartly against the floor. Her eyes landed on me, and I saw it instantly, the stiffening of her shoulders, the purse of her lips. Elias gave me a small wave that barely cleared his hip. I stood smiling, despite the weight in my chest. "Happy birthday to our little man," I said, looking around for Theo. Camilla's eyes swept over me like a scanner. She didn't return the smile. "What are you doing here already?" she asked. "You were supposed to wait in the lobby." I blinked. "Oh, I thought I'd sit down, get the table settled." She glanced toward the host stand, then back at me, her voice slicing the air. "Security!" she called out, snapping her fingers toward a passing server. "Excuse me. Can you get someone? This woman doesn't belong at our table." The server paused, confused. So was I. I looked at Elias. He was already pulling at his collar. His eyes lowered to the floor. "Camilla," I said quietly. "She's not a guest here," she said to the server, not looking at me. "Just, please have her removed." The restaurant hushed. Conversations dwindled. Forks paused mid-air. I felt 100 invisible eyes land on my dress, my hair, the way my shoes didn't match the shine of the floor. The label I'd worked my whole life to shed, Pauper, clung to me again, freshly branded. "I'm Ruth," I said, my voice steady. "Elias's mother, Theo's grandmother." The server hesitated. Elias still hadn't spoken. "I think I should go," I said at last. I picked up the gift from the table and turned. No one stopped me. No one called out. My heels tapped down the same polished floor, but somehow it felt louder this time. Outside, the wind caught the edge of my coat. I didn't let the tears come, not yet. My hands trembled, but I pressed them flat against the steering wheel and told myself to breathe. They didn't know who I was. That was the part that struck hardest, not that Camilla had humiliated me, but that Elias had let her. That after everything I had become invisible, even to my own son. I sat in my car as the sky dimmed above the skyline, the untouched gift still in my lap. And when I finally started the engine, I didn't head home. I drove to the one place where no one questioned my worth. I didn't drive home, not right away. Instead, I headed to the one place that always steadied me, the office. Ascendix Solutions stood quietly on the edge of uptown Charlotte, its glass exterior reflecting the dusk in copper and silver. I parked in the reserved spot that bore no name, only the number 01. The night security guard Thomas nodded as I passed. He didn't ask why I was there after hours. He never did. Upstairs, the elevator opened directly into the executive suite. The air was still, the lights low. I walked past the empty boardroom, the closed doors of offices named after people who thought I was a myth more than a woman. I unlocked the door to the northeast corner. My office was unchanged. No family photos, no awards on the shelves. Just a long mahogany desk, one framed photograph of a sunrise over Blue Ridge, and the scent of paper. and order. I sank into the leather chair and let the silence wrap around me. This was mine. I'd started Ascendix in a basement 35 years ago with one refurbished computer and a phone line that crackled every time it rained. Back then, no one thought a woman had any place in enterprise software. But I didn't care about their opinions. I cared about systems, how things worked, how people worked, and how to make them work better. Now the company had over 2,000 employees in 6 cities. Our software ran logistics for freight companies, managed hospital inventories, streamlined payroll for state agencies. We weren't flashy, but we were essential. That's the kind of success I had built, quiet, solid, hard to ignore if you actually looked. Camilla never looked. When Elias brought her around, the first time she had praised my cookies, asked polite questions about my knitting, and never once asked what I did for a living. Later, I overheard her telling Elias she admired how low maintenance his mother was. I could have corrected her, but I didn't. Maybe I wanted to see what she'd do with the story she'd written in her head. She never adjusted it. She only embellished it, adding layers of disdain, small cuts at every holiday, every birthday, every Sunday lunch. I let her. I told myself it was for Elias, for Theo. But now tonight, I was beginning to wonder. What had I taught my son? That silence was strength. That kindness meant swallowing your pride again and again for the comfort of others. I thought of him sitting there, watching me be dismissed like a stray off the street, watching his wife call for security as if I were a trespasser in their carefully curated world, and he had said nothing. I leaned back in the chair, staring at the ceiling, remembering Elias at 10, how he'd once thrown himself between a neighbor's dog and a trembling raccoon, yelling for someone to help. Back then, his voice had been loud, righteous, sure. I hadn't heard that voice in years. Maybe I had taught him too well to stay quiet. Maybe I had modeled humility so long that he mistook it for retreat. A soft knock pulled me from my thoughts. It was Janine, my assistant. 61, sharp as ever, her hair pulled back in a bun that never wavered even in the rain. "Didn't expect to see you tonight," she said gently. "Change of plans," I murmured. She looked at me for a beat longer than necessary, then nodded. "Want me to bring tomorrow's reports?" I shook my head. "Not tonight. Just let me sit." "Of course, ma'am." She closed the door behind her and I sat there alone again. Somewhere in this building, my daughter-in-law had her own office a few floors below. Her title was Marketing Manager for Strategic Campaigns. Her team adored her. HR considered her fast-rising. She had no idea who signed her checks, but she would. And soon. The next morning I arrived before the sun touched the skyline. Janine was already at her desk sipping from her ever-present navy mug. She didn't ask why I was early. She knew me well enough to recognize when something had shifted. "I need a favor," I said quietly, setting my bag down. "Discreet. Complete discretion." Janine looked up, her gaze sharpened behind her glasses. "Of course. I want files on an employee. Full HR record, digital and paper. No alerts to department heads, no summaries. Raw reports. Understand?" She didn't flinch. Who I hesitated, then said it. "Camilla Morrison." She blinked once, then nodded. "Give me until lunch." By noon, a folder sat on my desk, thick, heavy, full of the kind of details most executives never bother to read. I opened it. Her original hiring form, impressive credentials, a warm letter from her supervisor, calling her dynamic results, driven with strong leadership instincts. Then came the reviews. Each performance evaluation praised her initiative and polish, but there were footnotes, small, buried comments. Words like dismissive tone, lacks patience with junior staff, difficult in collaborative settings. I flipped further. Complaint number 1, Margaret Tinsley, D9. Senior Project Coordinator. She filed a formal grievance after Camilla mocked her in front of an entire team meeting, calling her stuck in the 90s and a drag on innovation. Margaret had been with us 12 years. 2 months later, she took early retirement. Complaint number 2. Samuel Rivera, 63, IT support. Camilla allegedly told him during a system update that he moved like a dial-up connection and questioned whether he was still trainable. He'd requested a departmental transfer the following week. Complaint number 3. Rachel Vaughn, 55. Facilities scheduling. Denied a last-minute meeting room request from Camilla due to a prior booking. Camilla filed a counter-complaint claiming Rachel was unfit for dynamic environments. Rachel was reassigned to night shifts shortly after. 3 different women, 3 different departments, one common thread: older, experienced, and all slowly pushed out or aside. None of the complaints reached my desk. Buried, I assumed, by middle managers who feared rocking the boat over one ambitious woman. Camilla had made herself look like a standard-bearer, a modernizer, and I had let the system make her invisible to me. I stared at the last page, Rachel's handwritten complaint, never officially filed. It read, "I'm not afraid of new ideas, but I do think respect is timeless." I closed the file and sat with my hands folded on the leather blotter. This wasn't just about me anymore. Camilla didn't just dismiss me as a mother-in-law, she dismissed anyone who didn't fit her image of competence. I pressed the intercom. "Janine, get me Jennifer in HR. No emails. Call her directly." Janine's voice came through a second later. On it. As I waited for the line to connect, I turned the file face down. There was no going back now. Jennifer arrived within the hour, holding a tablet and wearing that overly cautious expression HR people use when they're not sure which version of you they're about to meet. "Is there a situation?" she asked. "There's a pattern," I said, "and we're going to address it." I walked her through the 3 complaints. I made sure she saw Rachel's note, Margaret's exit interview, the timing of each reassignment. Jennifer listened quietly, occasionally, tapping notes into her device. When I finished, she looked up. "What would you like to do?" "She's not going to be fired. Not yet." Jennifer's brows lifted slightly. "She's going to learn," I continued, "or she'll leave on her own." "And how do you propose we teach her?" I leaned forward. "We're going to reassign her. Effective immediately. Cafeteria support, kitchen crew, entry-level duties, dishwashing, prep, cleaning. The kind of work she thinks is beneath her." Jennifer blinked. "That will raise flags. She's mid-management." "Then call it a cross-functional leadership rotation, part of a new top-down empathy initiative. Put together a memo about corporate responsibility and team alignment. Frame it as a pilot program for emerging executives." Jennifer stared at me, then slowly nodded. "And, should I say who approved this?" "No," I said. "She doesn't need to know. Not yet." By the end of the day, the transfer was official. Camilla would report to the basement cafeteria starting Monday morning. Shift starts 6:30 a.m. I made sure her supervisor was Janet Tinsley, Margaret's former colleague, now reassigned and overlooked for years. On Sunday, I drove to the back entrance of the building and entered through the service corridor. Janine had arranged for a spare uniform from facilities. I tucked my silver hair under a cap, pulled on worn sneakers, and left my phone in the locker room with the others. No one recognized me. That was the point. The kitchen hummed with clatter and steam. Stainless steel counters, the sharp scent of industrial detergent, the rhythm of plates and trays. I slipped into the dishwashing station just before the shift began. Camilla arrived 10 minutes late. She looked out of place instantly, her blouse a little too pressed, her posture too rehearsed. Her eyes darted around the space with open disdain, but she said nothing as Janet handed her gloves and showed her the sink. She didn't notice me at first, but when she did, she offered a flick of the eyes and a small curl of the lip. A silent judgment. "Don't crowd me," she muttered, when I moved to rinse a tray beside her. "I don't want to get splashed." I didn't respond. I just nodded and stepped back. She didn't know who I was. She didn't care to know. I reached for another tray, let the warm water run over my hands, and prepared to listen. By the second day, Camilla had stopped pretending. She moved through the kitchen like it was a war zone, dodging steam and noise as though she feared contamination. She wore the uniform like it was a costume, her name tag askew her apron, only half-tied. She spoke just loud enough to be heard, especially when she wanted someone to feel small. "Why is this sink designed like it's 1950? She scoffed. "No wonder these people move like turtles. They're used to relics." Janet ignored her. Maria, who worked the prep station and barely spoke English, gave her a polite smile. I just kept scrubbing. Camilla didn't acknowledge me beyond occasional eye rolls. I was invisible the way she preferred her support staff. But I watched. I listened. I cataloged. "You know what this is," she said on day 3 while drying trays too roughly. "Some HR dinosaur trying to teach me a lesson. Probably that old woman who always gives me side eyes during budget reviews. What's her name?" "Darlene Deborah Janet," muttered Luis, a soft-spoken college intern who rotated through food services. Camilla snapped her gloves off. "Whoever. It's petty. I'm too good for this. And this place? It's like being punished for ambition." Luis looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "Watch," she added, smirking. 2 weeks tops. They'll come begging for me to come back when their numbers drop." I wanted to believe this experience might soften her, that maybe stripped of her title and polished surroundings, she'd find some measure of humility. But all it did was expose what was already there. She didn't see the people beside her, only their supposed failures, their accents, their wrinkles, their practical shoes. She spoke about them like they were placeholders in her story, irrelevant until they got in her way. She never asked Maria about her grandchildren, never learned that Janet once managed logistics for 3 branches, never once said thank you when someone stayed late to help her. And every time she opened her mouth, the mask slipped a little further. On Friday morning, I called Janine from the staff locker room and told her to arrange a meeting. It was time. At exactly 10 o'clock, Janine's voice came through the intercom. "She's here. Send her in," I said. I stayed facing the window, the city stretching wide and unaware beneath me. I heard the door open, then the unmistakable click of Camilla's heels on the marble floor. She paused, confused. "I was told this was an HR matter," she said sharply. "Is someone coming?" I turned the chair slowly. Her face, when she saw me, shifted in stages. Confusion, disbelief, something close to horror. She blinked twice as if trying to recalibrate the scene. "You," she whispered. "Yes," I said. "Have a seat." She remained standing. "This is what is this, you're the cleaning woman." "No. I'm the founder and CEO of Ascendix Solutions. Have been for 35 years. She sat as if her legs stopped listening to her mouth. This doesn't make sense." "Why would you? Why didn't you say anything?" I opened the file on my desk and slid it toward her. "I wanted to see you in your element." "Turns out your element is wherever you feel superior." Camilla didn't move. "I've read every report, every grievance, every word you said in that kitchen. Calling people relics, mocking accents, dismissing decades of experience like it's a liability. You didn't just disrespect me, Camilla. You disrespected the people who make this company function. They're dishwashers," she said, voice brittle. "They're human," I replied, "and many of them have been here longer than you've been out of college." Camilla's posture straightened, defensive. "I didn't know who you were. I never would have." "Exactly. That's the problem. Your respect is conditional." I leaned forward. "You have 2 options. You can resign today. I'll authorize a neutral reference, nothing flattering, nothing damaging. Or you can return to the kitchen. Complete the full 6-week rotation Observe. Learn. Serve. Her eyes narrowed. That's blackmail. No. That's choice. She sat in silence for a long moment. I could see her calculating, looking for an exit that wouldn't cost her pride. I'll stay, she said finally. I'll finish your little rotation. You'll report directly to Janet for the remainder. Camilla's jaw tightened. Fine. I nodded once. Then you're dismissed. She rose, turned sharply, and walked out without another word. I exhaled slowly. She hadn't chosen growth. She'd chosen to endure. But the consequences would continue because learning, unlike punishment, cannot be faked. Elias showed up that evening unannounced, his tie loosened, shoulders tight. I knew why he was there before he said a word. She told me what happened, he said. About the demotion, about the kitchen. I waited. She said someone in senior leadership is targeting her, that it's personal. I gestured to the chair. He sat, but he didn't relax. She's not being targeted, I said. She's being exposed. He flinched. Mom, whatever this is, I just can't. We talk it through like family. She called security on me at a restaurant, I said, my voice calm. She called me a pauper in front of 20 strangers and our grandson. Then she spent a week mocking janitors, calling older employees dinosaurs, and bragging that she'd be back on top in 2 weeks. His face drained of color. She said that I nodded. And more. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. I didn't know. I didn't know any of it. You didn't want to. He covered his face with both hands. I said nothing. After a long silence, he stood. I'm taking Theo tonight, he said quietly. And I'm asking Camilla to stay with her sister, indefinitely. I nodded once. There was nothing to celebrate in it. Just something necessary finally being done. He hesitated at the door. I'm sorry, he whispered, for what I let happen, for standing still when I should have stood up. I reached out and squeezed his hand. Just be the father your son needs. That's enough. As the door closed behind him, I felt something shift, not in him, but in the weight I'd carried for years. The next morning, Camilla was back in the kitchen. 6 months passed quietly. Camilla submitted her resignation by email. No apology, no explanation, just a brief note citing personal direction changes and a request for her final paycheck to be mailed. I signed the acceptance without hesitation. In the weeks that followed, I promoted Janet to cafeteria supervisor. Maria now coordinated training for all new hires. Luis joined our internship program, full-time studying organizational ethics. The people she'd looked down on were now shaping the culture she once polluted. We also launched a new mentorship and scholarship program for employees. Over 50, those too often, overlooked, undervalued, or pushed aside. I named it the Second Wind Fund. Janine was the first to recommend 3 candidates. All of them cried when they learned they'd been chosen. Elias and Theo started coming by every Saturday. Theo loved puzzles just like Elias had at that age. He'd climb into my lap with a new story every week and sometimes pause halfway through to whisper, "Grandma, you're the strongest person I know." I never corrected him. I just held him tighter. My house remained modest, my routines simple. I walked more, baked again, spent more time listening to the people I'd hired long ago and forgotten to really see. I didn't need to win. I only needed to stay standing. Because in the end, it wasn't about humiliation or revenge. It was about showing the ones who worked the hardest, often in silence, that someone saw them, that someone would speak when they couldn't, that someone would stand even when it meant standing alone. And as I folded Theo's drawing into my desk drawer that evening, I finally felt the weight ease for good.